Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. My pronouns are he, him. I write and I talk about movies, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. My pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. My pronouns are she, her. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and a member of Gallica, the Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics.
Yes, you are. And you are also the owner of the longest intro on Spoiler Piece Theater.
We need a crown for
Yes,
that.
I am.
Yeah. Oh, that would be awesome. Note to self. Okay, so this week on the show, we got some movies to talk about. But before we get into that, just want to say that over on our Patreon, this Patreon episode is the poll winner for September. We asked you to choose a true crime movie for us to watch. When I say true crime, I mean movie based on a real crime. And you chose Zodiac, the 2007 David Fincher directed movie starring Gyllenhaal and Ruffalo and Downey Jr. So please go check that out. We had a lot of fun talking about it. And if you're not a patron, please consider joining for $5 a month. You get all the blobbity blee blee blee, and there's like 285 episodes that are available to you. I mean, that's a whole fucking shitload of episodes. And, you know.
It's a lot of blobbity blee.
And
Yeah,
chances are we're talking about movies you have seen before. So
right.
That's something.
Yeah. Forgot about that part. Double incentive. So anyway, this week on the shoe, we have two new movies. We've got Vesper, which is a dystopian future sci-fi movie. And we have Sissy, which is a dystopian, not sci-fi future movie. I mean, I guess you could call it dystopian. I don't know. Probably not. But today we're going to kick off with Vesper, which is, like I said, dystopian future sci-fi. And here's the description from ye old IMDb. After the collapse of Earth's ecosystem, Vesper, a 13-year-old girl struggling to survive with her paralyzed father, meets a woman with a secret who will force her to use her wits, strengths, and biohacking abilities to fight for the possibility of having a future. That's a fucking mouthful.
Yeah.
I mean, that sums it up. You know, that's an accurate description.
Good job, IMDb.
Yeah, good job. Hard to believe that's one sentence. So anyway, Raffaella Chapman stars as Vesper. Eddie Marsan is evil. And
yes, he is.
Rosie McEwen is the mysterious woman. That is exactly what it says. So Vesper is... I mean, what do we see? We see her looking for like root vegetables in the mud, right? Isn't that what she's doing when we first see her?
Yep.
Because she's looking for seeds.
She's looking for seeds. She comes home. And when we say her father's paralyzed, we mean paralyzed, like from the neck down.
Bedridden. He's got it fed through an IV. He's got a drone that basically carries around his, I don't know. How does he how does he see through that thing? Yeah. Is his brain
that's interesting. I didn't think about the sight, but because he can also see because he warns her that there's somebody in the house, or he warns the mysterious woman. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and like we say, Eddie Marsan is her uncle, and he's got this thing where he has a growing brood of children. That he sells their blood to the government, not the government, because the governments have all failed. So there are these rich districts, all called citadels, which you can, if you've got the money, you can go live there. But of course, none of these people have money. And the citadels are in charge of like doling out seeds, which are expensive. And the seeds have like an encryption so that you can't grow them yourself. So Eddie Marsan has figured out a way or he's the person who does the growing via the Citadel. I can't remember. It's a little muddled, or my memory's muddled. One of those two. And so,
low column B.
Right. So Vesper is selling her blood one day to her uncle, and he's like being a creep, putting his thumb on her lip. That was super creepy. But then I realized he did that with his brother too. Like that same move. I'm like, this is fucking, this guy's a whack job.
Well, he just doesn't have good boundaries, clearly.
Well, for sure. So anyway, Vesper goes to she's going to steal something from him. Oh, she's going to get her blood back. That's what it is. And then one of her, I guess it would be half cousins. I don't know. Like lets her into a place where Eddie Marsan's got all the seeds. She steals one. She figures out how to like hack it. And she's like, we can grow our own food. In the meantime, there's drones flying across. I think they're drones. I think they're piloted, but not by the people flying them, I don't think. And there's one in trouble and it crashes. And Vesper is out wandering around and she finds the mysterious woman whose name is Camellia. Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Played by Rosie McEwen. And there are these creatures we should mention called jugs, which are these non-intelligent humanoid synthetic beings that are basically slave labor. And it turns out that Camellia is a jug, but she has intelligence. And that's why she and her father had fled one citadel and were going to another. And he had figured out like a seed thing and blah, blah. And it's actually kind of densely plotted, which you would think, in my opinion, a movie this densely plotted with a dystopian theme and an evil uncle and a drone and a mysterious woman would be a lot more compelling and would move a little faster and wouldn't make you say, when the fuck is this over?
Yikes.
I didn't get that bad for me, but
no, but it did feel very long and slow.
Yeah, and Megan had really,
Megan
had really wanted to see this, and I was like, oh, what the fuck is Vesper? And then I read the description, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And then I started watching it, and I was like, this is not cool.
The poster is really cool too, which I have to say, the poster is the screenshot from the film, the frame from the film that I saw like a year ago, and I was like, I don't know what's happening in this movie, but I'm in. And then when I found out it was about a teen girl and it was post-apocalyptic and dystopian, I'm like, I'm triply, quadruply in. So yeah, that's why I was in.
I mean, there are some interesting things about this. You know, there's the relationship that Vesper develops with Camellia is kind of a mother-daughter thing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize at first, you know, when Camellia, Vesper finds her after this crash landing and there's all these plants like feeding on her blood, which I never understood how that worked, except that there are carnivorous plants in this dystopian future. Yeah. Because one of the things they did was they tried to alter like biochemistry, right? And it didn't work.
Right.
Yes. And yeah.
That's what led. Yeah. They say in a title card, it's kind of rushed, but yeah, they had tried to alter the DNA of plants and other creatures, and that led to like unstoppable viruses and all kinds of unforeseen consequences that seem to make most of the landscape desolate, and then the rest of it, I don't know, like you said, carnivorous plants and other things are now around.
Well, and then there's another plant that you find at the end of the movie that like shoots insects out of it, you know, when you touch the leaves, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then the insects, you know, they're flying so fast, they go right through you and then they crawl out the other side. It's gross. So there's some interesting things. The relationship with Camellia and Vesper I liked. I think one of the big problems with this movie is the direction is kind of inert, I thought. You know, you've got a lot of people who are like doing nefarious things and supposed to be running around, and there's like a real lack of urgency in all this stuff. Yes. So there's that. Yes. There's the scene where Vesper, like I had said, Camellia was traveling with her father, and Vesper finds Camelia's father, and then her uncle finds the father and, you know, doesn't strangle him. What's he do? He just shuts off his airway and he suffocates him and dies and throws him in a bog or whatever it is. And then Vesper ultimately says to Camellia, oh, your father's dead. And she takes him to the body and she freaks out, as one would. And then I don't know why the tables get turned and Vesper starts like beating up Camellia for something. I don't remember why.
Oh, because she learns she wasn't going to take her to the Citadel after all, because that's when she reveals they were fleeing from the Citadel.
She wasn't going to take her to the Citadel, and Vesper's like, fuck you. She didn't say that. And starts beating Camellia, but it's like the most I don't know if it's a character thing. I think it's a direction thing. It looks fake, like she's like hitting the ground in front of the actor, in front of Rosie McEwen, who plays Camellia, and it's like slow and stagey, and it doesn't seem very angry, and it's like, what the fuck am I watching? I see Megan nodding in agreement.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes, it feels very drained of emotion. Like there is no emotion in that scene. There's no propulsion. There's no emotion, which is interesting because I think much later in the film, I felt real emotional connection between Vesper and or Camellia, whatever her name is.
Yeah, it's like Camilla, but it has an extra syllable in it.
Right. So I want to say Camellia, but it's Camilla. Between Vesper and Camilla, like there's real emotional connection. And it, when Vesper's when she's like, I order you to stay, you can't leave. It's really sad because she's reminded of her mother leaving and she's just so desperate for a maternal figure. So I think that's done really well. But that scene where she's pissed off at Camilla for not being honest. And it's like, well, you weren't honest because she doesn't even tell Camilla immediately that her father was dead. She's like, oh, I didn't see him. I didn't find him. So anyway, but that scene has some issues, as does some other scenes
Goes both ways, Vesper, God damn it.
Vesper. Although she's
Vesper's 13. What can you do exactly? But by the way, who was that corpse in the building that, Vesper was doing the experiments in? Who was that?
I don't know. Dead scientists? It was unclear.
Yeah, Vesper is sneaking off to do experiments in this building, listeners, and there's a corpse in there, mostly decomposed, that Vesper's just like, hey, corpse, what up? Every time she goes in there.
Yeah,
and it's like,
I'm taking stuff from the old lab, she calls it.
Right. And then there's all these plants on the wall, like the carnivorous plants, which they only allude to once, and then the rest of the time it's like, oh, they're taking a nap. I don't know. And I don't know. It's very strange and very inert. I did like Rosie McEwen's performance. I didn't like the kid's performance so much. I thought the dad did a lot with just his eyes. Very Tom Hardy-esque in that manner. I mean, he didn't look like Tom Hardy. I just mean the way that he can use his eyes.
I mean, he's been in a ton of things, a ton of movies, ton of TV shows. So he's done a lot of acting, and he's usually really ominous and creepy. Like he was the villain in Bingo Hell, and he's often really menacing. So here it's kind of nice to see him in a much more gentle performance. And I agree. He's doing a lot with his eyes.
Yeah. And Eddie Marsan's really good too. But he's kind of back and he's played a lot of like creepy villains. But I've actually seen a couple movies lately where he's like a nice, normal guy. Of course, I can't remember one is where he's like an undertaker. But anyway, that's another story for another time because it's just a weird movie. But he's a nice guy in that, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But
he's the World's End too.
Right. But this though, he's like standard. Eddie Marsan is like, I almost expect him, like a Cockney guy to come around the corner and be like, you got the blood, mate. It's like one of those kind of things. But he's super creepy, especially when he tells one of his kids, he's like, kill that Jug who's injured. And then all the stabbing and well, and then they don't explain that, but they got that thing in the back of their neck, which you can control them with, which doesn't come up. I feel like you need to explain that because, I feel like if you just stabbed that Jug once in that part of the neck, wouldn't that kill them? I don't know. I mean, a lot of this stuff is not explained, and, I'm usually okay with that, but I feel like in sci-fi, you kind of have to explain shit, So, I don't know. What did you overall think of this, the both of you?
I liked this. I mean, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, Dave, with your critique of the directing. I would say the direction is probably for me the weakest in that I love a slow burn. I don't care about how fast something's moving, if it's building to something or if there's really compelling emotional resonance. And so I'm okay if something is slow, but this did not feel that way. This felt like it was just slow and kind of treading water. So I think this needed better pacing. But I liked this. I like the concept tremendously. I love dystopian and post-apocalyptic films. You guys know that's my sweet spot. It's my jam. And the notion that all the animals and all the plants have died off except for these seeds and that's the only thing people can eat. Like that's horrifying and that's really depressing and nihilistic and awful. So I like that concept to start with.
Yeah.
And I like that Vesper is a teen scientist. I think that that's really cool and that's great that she's taught herself all these things. And she has this goal of wanting to go to the Citadel so she can be a scientist there. And it's very clear because her father warns her like, oh, dreams are dangerous, like, which is a kind of obvious warning. But it's very clear like, oh, she's not going to the Citadel, or if she does, it's not going to be the way she thinks. So that foreshadowing is happening, right away. So yeah, I liked it, but I do think that there are uneven parts to it. Like I think it moves a bit too slowly. I think the lead actress's performance is at times really, really good, and then other times not at all. And so again, I think that comes back to the directing on that. Yeah, I wish it focused a bit more. It's interesting because you wanted more exposition, Dave, and I wanted more focus on the characters, and I wanted some more complexity with the characters. Everything feels a bit simplistic, which is interesting considering that you're right. This is a really dense concept, and there's these really dense ideas happening, which, by the way, I think there's a lot of great ideas happening here. Yeah.
There are a lot of good ideas in this movie. The execution of it is just really stodgy.
It's weird because I kept feeling like this has got to be building to something. This has got to be building to something. And it just really doesn't. And I really, really wanted more expansive world building. And obviously this is a very small budget film. So I understand there's limitations. But I've seen a lot of sci-fi that have worked, sci-fi films that have worked with very, very limited budgets have done a lot more. So I was kind of hoping for more. And if you're going to keep it so contained in space, that's also fine. But then you have to do more with the characters, or there just has to be more.
Yeah.
And so overall, I did really like this, but there are things that I wish had been better.
Yeah. One of the things that I wish they had focused more on was Vesper as a scientist, because she just kind of shows you all the stuff she's working on. And there's the one brief scene where she figures out how to crack the DNA code. But otherwise, it's just we just have to take her word that she's a fucking scientist. I mean, I guess why not? Yeah. But at the same time, it's why not just show her fucking tilling some crops? I don't know. Something. It's she's created all these plants, and there are no plants in this world. So she's created all these plants. So let's, spend 6 minutes on that. Take 6 minutes out of Eddie Marsan being a creep and give us 6 minutes of Vesper, making plants.
Point. Did we really need him being a creep and kind of implicitly threatening rape the whole entire time of the movie?
Yeah.
To the point where we literally see him shove his finger into the slit of Camilla's back of her neck. So gross. But yeah, I agree. Take out some of the rape threats and focus on her science and focus on her biohacking and botany and all that. I agree. That would have been fascinating.
I agree with a lot of the critiques. I found it slow. I found it a trudge. I liked a lot of the ideas in this movie, and I think there were some really great ideas with kind of lackluster execution. I think the directing is definitely a weak spot. I thought the cinematography was actually pretty good, and the art direction. I liked.
Yes.
A lot of the color palettes were really intriguing to me, even when they're just kind of wandering around the forest between the costumes and the colors of the forests. So I found it very visually appealing, and I did think there were some great ideas in here. I just wish it was done a little bit better.
Speaking of the color palettes and the production design and art design, I agree with you. And something that I also like about it is that it feels very grimy and gritty, very dystopian.
Yes.
But yet I saw this, before I saw this film, I saw it described as a sci-fi fairy tale. And and there's certain colorful touches visually that kind of evoke a fairy tale. And I also really like how, I don't understand exactly why this happens, but Camilla kisses Vesper and then she falls asleep, which is something she also does to her father to kind of make him fall asleep so then he can heal or rest. And she does that to Camilla so she can save her. And I like that because it's very much a kind of Sleeping Beauty, Snow White in reverse, like kind of that fairy tale, kiss element, like usually wake somebody up and this time it's putting them to sleep. So I liked that. I liked those little touches kind of mixed with the sci-fi elements.
One area I'll say that I disagree a little bit with you, Dave, is that I feel like there were some good moments of seeing her doing her science, like when she was decoding the seeds and like looking at Camelia's DNA and figuring out that it like vibrated at the same like frequency as the musical note that she was playing on the I forget the name of that instrument, the zither. And so I thought that was cool. And I like seeing her when she's in her own little like greenhouse space tending to her plants. So I feel like I got enough of that. I was enjoying those parts of the movie. Maybe we could have seen more of them, but I did think they were there and I liked them.
Okay. I will accept that.
I agree with both of you. I like those scenes too, Evan, and you're absolutely right. But like you, Dave, I wanted more of them.
Yeah. I found, although I do like your point, Evan, about the vibration of the note being the same as the, DNA or whatever that she figures out. But, I just, what was I going to say about it? I can't remember. I think so much of it is like, because it's not any kind of technology that we recognize, it remains abstract. So,
interesting.
So I think that's what I struggled with. I'm like, all right, you've got these 7 like circles and now you've got an 8th one that's like the other 7, but I don't understand what I'm looking at, but you're telling me, so I should understand, but I don't. So, could be my problem. Very possible. So yeah. I mean, I have to say, I didn't dislike this movie. Like, not at all. There was nothing that made me go, oh, come on. There was nothing like that. It was just like we've been saying, it was a pacing thing, a direction thing. The lead performance is very back and forth. I really liked Camellia, and Eddie Marsan is always good.
He was good.
So, yeah. So anyway, that's what I think of Vesper, and you all think. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on? Oh, good. Let's hear it.
Richard Brake is the father, who is also really great. It was driving me up a wall that I couldn't think of his name, so I had to look it up. And the other scene that I really like, which speaks to what you were saying, Dave, about Vesper and Camilla's relationship, is I do like that Vesper, while I'm bothered at kind of the messaging that is given about suicide, I like that Vesper saves Camilla from suicide after the death of her father. And because then it comes around full circle when Camilla saves Vesper from running back into the burning building with the death of her father. Right. So I really like that they're kind of saving each other and protecting each other, which just speaks to the strength of their relationship, which I think is one of the strengths of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
How do you both feel about the ending? Where she climbed, she climbed to the top of that tower and then just released the seeds, the little like propellers or whatever, and just let the wind kind of take them where they went.
Well, they were going to like land wherever and start growing, right? Mm-hmm. That was the indication. I don't know. It seemed kind of like, I mean, they don't have a lot of money to have her go to a citadel, meaning the filmmakers, have a lot of money to have her go to the Citadel and be like, fuck you all, I found the thing. And there's like 8 million people going like, what are you talking about, kid? I mean, as like a, I don't know what you would call it. I was going to say foreshadowing. That's not right. But it does kind of button everything up. She's figured out everything. She's done this, but she climbs up there pretty good.
She almost falls.
Right. She's wearing like waders too. I was like, how the heck is she climbing all that with these like rubbery ass boots?
So wait, Dave, are you saying you did like that ending or no?
It's fine. I mean, I was kind of like, I think kind of like what you were saying, you were expecting it to build towards something. And I was like, this is what we get. This is a very quiet ending for everything that just happened in the previous 10 minutes. So, Yeah,
I don't know. I kind of liked it. it's because there's something in a weird way, like it's kind of hopeful because it's like, oh, people are going to get the seeds.
Yeah.
It's not just going to be for the elite. It's like, because Vesper says that earlier. She's like, we help each other. And that's what she's kind of doing is she's helping, her fellow humans, except she does save a few seeds, and hides them for, I'm assuming, herself. But then I'm also like, but wait a minute, where are her and her half cousins or whoever those kids are, where are they going to go? And because everybody else is dead. So that's really sad. And you don't know what's going to happen. And it's also sad because like her lifelong dream has been to go to the Citadel, and she's not going to do that clearly because she, looks to the left and sees it there, and then she turns the other way. So clearly she's kind of, emotionally turning her back on the Citadel, which is, kind of sad because it's like the end of her childhood. It's like adulthood, like reality setting in, like, oh, your dreams are dead. Like, it's a very sad ending, very depressing, but also hopeful. So I liked it. It worked for me because it's working on multiple levels.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Evan, what about you?
I was a little underwhelmed. I think to what Dave was saying about there was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of buildup, so I feel like we were kind of building to something less kind of just like, well, just let the seeds go where they may. It's definitely a cool visual. I like that she climbs up there, and I like seeing the view and seeing where they are in the world. But also sad, just kind of like you were saying, where the hell does she go from here?
Yeah.
And honestly, I feel like if the seeds are that valuable, I'm surprised she doesn't try to cultivate them all in one place rather than letting them go to the wind, where, I mean, like we know how seeds work in life now. If you like throw seeds down, they're not all going to grow. Birds will eat them. Other animals could eat them. They might not, you know what I mean? So for something that's such a valuable
There are
commodity,
no animals.
There are no animals though.
Well, okay.
So no animals
so
are going to eat them.
So there aren't animals that are going to eat them, but like we also know that environmental conditions can prevent them from actually growing.
That's true.
So I would think if they're valuable, you'd want to cultivate them all to your. You'd want to have like a place where you could actually cultivate them versus just kind of letting the wind carry them. Anyway, I'm overthinking this, but I remember thinking I'm a little underwhelmed, a little disappointed by this ending. But what can you do?
Yeah. What can you do? Okay, so those are our thoughts on Vesper, and now we're going to move on to our second movie of the night, Sissy, which means what you think it means. Here's your log line. Teen best friends Cecilia and Emma, after a decade, run into each other. Cecilia is invited on Emma's bachelorette weekend, where she gets stuck in a remote cabin with her high school bully with a taste for revenge. Boy, that's really poorly
also
written.
Not a high school bully.
Right. Like middle school.
Yes.
They were 12, right? Or 13. Anyway, let me break that down because it makes it sound like the high school bully has a taste for revenge, which is not what happens. So Cecilia and Emma were best friends when they were children up until they were about 12 or 13. And then Emma decided to no longer be best friends with Cecilia, who they called Sissy at the time, and became best friends with Alex. Yes. And it's kind of unclear what happened, or how it happened, I should say. But at some point when Alex and all the other kids are calling Cecilia Sissy, you're a big sissy, whatever, Cecilia picks up like a spade. I mean, I don't even know where she got this garden tool. It's not a spade.
Trowel,
it's like one of those really short trowel. Thank you. She picks up a trowel and stabs Alex in the face. And hard to see how that's an accident, as they say later in the movie, but okay. So that happens. And, fast forward, I guess 15 years later, they're in their late 20s probably. Emma runs into now Cecilia at the pharmacy. And we should mention that Cecilia is a borderline influencer. She's got 200,000 followers on Instagram, and she's like a wellness, like a mental health advocate, I think is how she describes it. Simply Cecilia. And she's like, oh, and you should, everybody's, safe within their circle, and this is a safe space. She's like, I don't want to reduce it, but just new agey, in a very 21st century kind of way. So anyway, she has to go to the pharmacy because she gets her period, and she's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. So she goes and she's trying to buy some products, and she sees Emma, and she's like, fuck. She turns and she goes the other way. And then Emma's like, oh my God, Sissy, I can't believe it. And Cecile's like, actually, it's Cecilia now. She's like, oh, okay. And Emma makes the change pretty quickly and starts calling her Cecilia. And Emma kind of acts like nothing is really, aside from saying, I was just thinking about you the other day. I can't believe we haven't seen each other in so long. Aside from like kind of making that reference, she doesn't reference the past at all. And then Emma invites Cecilia to like a karaoke for, party before her wedding, her being Emma. And then at the karaoke, 1, Emma throws up on Cecilia. 2, Cecilia, I mean, not like on purpose, obviously. It's like Emma's just really hammered and they're singing a song and she throws up on Cecilia. So then you see Emma in the restroom, like throwing up into the toilet, and her fiance comes in and she's like, hey, I got to call you a car and get you home. And I was like, no. And then Emma says, hey, you should come to my hens this weekend, which, bachelorette party. And Cecilia's like, okay, ? And so the rest of the movie takes place at the remote cabin, which we should say is a remote. I mean, the cabin is state of the art.
Right.
It's not a cabin.
It looks like someone's regular ass house.
It's a
doesn't
fucking
even look like a vacation home.
A very nice house.
Yeah. I mean, it might be in, what we would consider the bush, but it's very contemporary and very well equipped. And, everybody can get Wi-Fi there. So obviously it's,
Right.
Thank you. They can get Wi-Fi down at the fucking lake or the creek, a mile away from the house. So they're not in, fucking wherever. They're not in the Northern Territory, is I guess what I'm saying. Here's my limited knowledge of Australian, geography. So anyway, Cecilia, it turns so she can drive a stick. So she's driving the crew to the hens party, and first of all, they hit a kangaroo, and which is the fakest looking collision you've ever seen in your life. But then when they cut to the animal like dying on the road, that's pretty gruesome. And then Emma's fiance, who is American, says, does anybody have a gun? And all the Australians are like, no, this is Australia. So they run over the kangaroo to put it out of its misery, which is horrifying. And then they get to the house, and then Alex is there, which Cecilia knew Alex was going to be there because she had written on Emma's Instagram page, can't wait for this weekend or see you at my house or whatever. It's Alex's house.
That's what's going on.
Right. And Alex sees Cecilia and is like, grabs Emma and is like, what the fuck, dude? Takes her into another room and is like screaming at Emma. And you can kind of make out what they're saying. And Emma basically says, what? It was like fucking 15 years ago, man. Take it easy. And you get the feeling that Alex is maybe she's overreacting, but Emma's also underreacting to this whole thing. So then what unfolds is probably what you expect, which is that Emma and Alex the next day get into a fight at the creek where Alex is genuinely being a shithead and trying to record a video and then upload it to Instagram, in which she, while Cecilia's there, in which she says, your friend Cecilia here, you see, simply Cecilia, you see this big scar on my face? Well, it's because she picked up a trowel and stabbed me with it when we were 13 or whatever she says. And they're fighting, they're tussling in the water, and Cecilia's trying to get her phone back. And the way she gets her phone back is she picks up
crystal.
Some,
You said new age.
crystal. Right. She picks up a crystal and bashes Alex on the back of the head and stops the video right before it uploads. And then the rest of the movie becomes this sort of Agatha Christie, and then there were none, while Cecilia is, killing everybody off, kind of in her own little dream world. And Emma finally realizing what's going on and, having it out with Cecilia. we should mention, very important, Alex gets hit on the head with, Cecilia hits Alex on the head with this crystal, drags her body through the forest, buries her. And then one of the other party attendees, this guy whose name I can't remember, comes and Jamie, he's taken a leak and he starts pissing on this makeshift grave that Cecilia has made, which I don't think she intends to be a grave. It's more like a.
She records a video around it, being like, sometimes it's good to just like plant plants and nurture them.
Right. And then, Jamie comes over there and he sees the body and he runs off. And we should mention that he's on one crutch. I can't remember. So the fact that he stays so far ahead of her, well, obviously he knows how to use his crutch very well, but they're running through the forest. And of course they come to like a big rock cliff kind of thing. And I think this is one of the many problems I have with this movie, is that that Cecilia is going to push him off the edge, but for some reason it takes about 90 seconds. Maybe it's not that long. Maybe it takes a minute. And so she finally pushes him off. Although when they cut to the wide shot of his body falling down the cliff, that's pretty gross. Just because whatever dummy they used or whatever, it's pretty good looking. And you don't see what his body looks like until much, much later. And there is some good stuff about how everybody kind of gets lost in the woods. So Cecilia can get away with this stuff without anybody really knowing what's going on. And then Cecilia does end up killing everybody and pinning the whole crime on Alex. And then there's the ending, which I couldn't tell whether she was imagining that or whether it actually happened. And I don't know how you two felt. But I think my main takeaway from this, and I could be reading this wrong, and I don't think this is what the filmmakers intended, but the main takeaway seems to me to be don't bully people, which is, I would agree with that. But first, don't bully people who may be mentally ill because they might hack you to death or run over you with their car. I mean, it seemed like really kind of gross that way.
Yes.
That
was my exact problem with this film. Yep.
Is that what you thought too? Okay.
No, you were
so I wasn't
not
alone.
alone. Right. Yeah. I love Aisha D and I love her performance. I think she's really fantastic in this. I liked her on the Bold Type, the show, and she was great in that. And she's really fantastic here. But yeah, my big problem, because I think it could have potentially, because it's raising these really fascinating issues around seeking validation through social media, creating a faux personality on social media, bullying, childhood trauma, and how trauma, because, we see Cecilia dealing with the trauma of being bullied, but Alex is also dealing with the trauma of a violent act and being, disfigured and how horrifying that is. So it's dealing with these really intense issues, and it's kind of starts to dig into them in a really interesting way. But yes, my massive problem with this film is its depiction of mental illness. And I was wildly uncomfortable as it was becoming, because at first you think like, oh, Alex is the asshole. But no, it's very clear Cecilia's the asshole, which is a kind of an interesting twist, potentially. But I very quickly became uncomfortable with the depiction of mental illness. And then by the end, I was like, that's your takeaway? Like, that's the message? Yeah, Dave, I was on board with you. I felt the exact same way. And it made me wildly uncomfortable and really gross.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you both, and then Evan, get your full, take. But did you think that she was imagining the ending? Like, it's clear that she, Alex comes in, and so what happens is Cecilia has all of this stuff from when she and Emma were children, like a time capsule in this video, and they had colored their hair red and stuff like that. And so Cecilia at one point basically kidnaps Emma and ties her to a chair and colors her hair, and she's going to do her nails. And it ends up that they end up fighting, and Alex, it turns out, was just, passed out, not really dead. By the way, the makeup in her bloodshot eye, I thought was really good.
It was horrifying.
Yeah. And so Alex comes in and sees Emma on top of Cecilia. Emma's finally gotten the upper hand in this fight, and it looks like she's going to kill Cecilia. but Alex mistakes Emma for Cecilia because Cecilia had this hair color the whole weekend, and she's just colored Emma's hair to be the same way. So Alex thinks that Emma is Cecilia and starts beating her with Jamie's crutch, which she has found somewhere. And basically, if you remember the opening, although in the story it takes place at the end, the opening of what's the movie with Monica Bellucci that goes backwards? Inconceivable?
Irreversible.
Is that what it's called? Or Unrepeat? Irreversible, where they beat the guy to death with the with the fire extinguisher. It's like that, but with a crutch and lower budget. So Alex ends up killing Emma, and when she realizes what she has done, by this point, the police have been called. Alex actually called them. The police come in, and they shoot Alex in the back of the head in kind of an interesting way that the bullet sort of, Alex pulls it out of her head and then dies. And then the police officer thinks that Alex has killed everybody. And Cecilia has made a video and posted it to her followers saying the same thing. So she gets away with it. But then the next scene where she's back and she's doing her social media thing and she's talking about her new book and she's in this big pink room. Did she imagine that, or did that happen? Like, did the story actually end in the house with the police coming in, or did it end 3 minutes later when she's written this best-selling book? Because it seems it's shot to me in a way that it seems like it's all in her head, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm unsure too, but it does seem that way because we see throughout the film these kind of fantastical elements where she is hallucinating or imagining things, and it's kind of shot in that way and has the same kind of color palette. So yeah, it seems like it's in her head, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, me too. Evan, what are your overall impressions and about the ending?
I guess I'll start with the ending since we're talking about it. I kind of took it at face value. I took it as like it did happen and that she was now turning this whole situation into profit because it just felt so in line with the beginning of the movie. So I did, but I agree with you. It's not, it's open to interpretation. I think there is that possibility that she's imagining it because there are so many moments where she has these delusions of grandeur. So very much could be in her head.
Yeah.
I think I enjoyed this movie more than you two did, but I agree that there's some ickiness to it. And I think maybe some implications that the filmmakers weren't intending to make about mental illness and how it's depicted here. Because I feel like they're trying to make this like movie about, you know, an anti-bullying message, but also kind of like campy and silly. And I like the movie when it's campy. And I think it probably could have gotten campier sooner. when it's just like campy and it's about the killing, like it's actually pretty fun and gruesome. Like when she runs over the fiance's head and there's like a slow-mo of her like head. It's like weirdly gory in places where I was not expecting.
So gross.
Yeah.
So I was digging those elements of it, but it does, it feels like there's some icky implications about the mental health piece of it. I feel like it's just not very well done, or maybe not well thought through, of like people could take this way from the movie, but maybe also take away this like statement on mental health of like, you know, someone gets bullied enough, they'll just turn and start murdering people. And then like, they'll just keep murdering people all the way through. But I did think that there was another interesting sub point about the social media angle and the idea that people do a lot of stuff. They watch videos like this, or, you know, record them in her case, and feel like they're doing the work to work through their trauma. And I think this is an example of someone who thinks that they're doing the work, but hasn't done the work and hasn't dealt with the trauma. And I think that a lot of people kind of use social media or wellness blogs and things like that as a way to feel like they're working on their shit, but not actually like digging into the meat and really like examining it. And so I think that was an interesting point that the movie was making. But it's just, something about it just rubbed me the wrong way. And it just took me a while, like after the movie where like, you know, Shauna and I were talking about it. It's like, I really, something was just not sitting right. And I think maybe that if it just leaned into the campiness and didn't try, or it wasn't, if it went campier and just like made it really silly, or like actually dug more into like the mental health aspects of it, then I feel like it might have been better. But it was some kind of middle space between the two that didn't work, and then kind of left you with these like other takeaways that I'm sure that they weren't intending but felt icky.
I agree with you, Evan. And I think that that's a really great point that you raise, that people kind of the surface level trauma work, like you think you're digging in. The one thing I will say that as you're saying that it reminded me of, and again, this would have been something interesting to delve into, but that would be a different kind of film. But a lot of people use social media to work through trauma, not as their sole substance, but they use it to supplement their therapy sessions or the trauma work they're doing. But some people only use social media for it because therapy's fucking expensive, and not everybody has insurance. Not everybody can afford it, you know, so it's not accessible to everyone. But that's what I was thinking. But I was like, wow, this would be such an interesting topic and issue to really get into. But again, it would be a very different movie.
Right. Yeah. And you could do it if you went more in that direction.
Yes.
I do think it could still be compelling, but it's some of the ways that they show trauma responses, but I feel like they're treated in a very like surface level kind of way, like when she's like holding herself and like rocking back and forth, you're like, okay, that, you know, from what I know is a trauma response from people, but I feel like they don't really delve into that more, other than to just show her being overwhelmed and then being like, well, murder.
Murder.
I'm overwhelmed with the need to murder people.
But I think, you know, that's the thing too, is that, you know, the more I feel like the more films that we talk about that deal with trauma, and the more films that deal with it either very overtly or more kind of subtextually, I feel like we need more people who are trauma informed to be writing films, directing films, working on films, consulting on films, because it's very necessary to have a trauma informed lens in order to get accuracy when you're depicting it. And if you don't understand trauma, if you haven't experienced it, or you have not done the work, or you're not a professional, you're going to portray it in a very, more than likely, superficial way. And it's kind of annoying, because it's like, why? Also, Alex should be exhibiting trauma symptoms too, because she also experienced trauma, and it's, you know, and people experience trauma differently. But I think it would have been really great to see her also show a trauma response, but in a very different way. But that doesn't happen. And so, so while I'm watching, I'm like, this is a great performance. There's some really great gory practical effects, some great issues raised, but wow, is it just dropping the ball with how it's actually dealing with these issues, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe, and they didn't really touch on it from a narrative point of view because it is Sissy's story, but maybe Alex's trauma response is to revert to bullying, which is what she does.
That's a good point.
Good point.
Who knows?
Because she does come guns blazing pretty much as soon as Cecilia shows up. She is just like all over her, just saying mean things and being judgmental and shitty.
Well, and then she turns everybody else on her too, except for Emma. I mean, there's a point when I think Cecilia gets up and leaves the dinner table, and everybody but Emma laughs about it. And the fiance has just gotten done saying, I'm working on my postdoc in psychology. And I'm just thinking, this is how a psychologist would react to this? I don't think so.
No.
You know?
Not a good one.
Not a good one, yeah. And, you know, the other thing I'm going to say, and I'm not, I think you raise a good point about trauma advisors. I don't know how you phrased it, Megan, but
thank you.
I think you're right. But here's another thing. We don't have any press notes for this because, like we said, it's Shudder. Maybe this is like Hannah Barlow's basing this on a real incident that she witnessed or was a part of. I mean, who knows? I mean, there are so many unknowns here, but I think the takeaway that we've all talked about and agreed on is that the movie's not sending a very good message about, don't bully someone because she might have a psychotic break and kill you,
And, I think the issue is compounded by the fact that there's so many films in general, but especially in horror, which, is a genre we all love. And by we, I mean the three of us. I can't speak to everybody. But there's so many tropes, so many ableist tropes, so many tropes about mentally ill people. And it's a fine line because, if someone's killing, there's a good chance there's a pathology for it. But at the same time, there's a lot of uncomfortable tropes that are perpetuated. And I think that's the thing too. If there weren't so many problematic tropes, maybe we wouldn't be having this really uncomfortable, visceral reaction to this. Or maybe we would. Who knows?
Yeah. And there's also the kind of unexplored, but it's there, that this whole thing, that Cecilia might have actually planned this whole thing once she got invited to, once she realizes that Alex is a part of this, she I don't know that she means to kill Alex. I think that it seems like it's an accident, but she starts taking on characteristics of somebody doing first degree murders because she makes that video for her followers that she posts. She she plans the whole hair color thing. So it seems as if that I don't know how that you would A, know that Alex was still alive, and B, be lucky enough for Alex to mistake Emma for you. I mean, it's dark in there, and so there's two women with red hair, so you can't really see. All right. But then to have Emma or Alex to be standing there when the cop comes in and shoot her at the back of the head at the perfect moment, it's all just a little too neat also. Yeah.
Well, also the other thing that we haven't discussed, which you're totally right about though, Emma is a white woman and Cecilia is a black woman with very curly hair. And so they have very different hair. They look different, and yes, I know her eye is all bloody and she can't see very well, but still anyway. Yeah. So it's just bizarre.
Right. I mean, there's also all the sexual undertones of, Cecilia being obsessed with Emma for all this time. And then, Emma grows up and is marrying a black woman.
Right.
And that certainly...
oh my God, I didn't even think about that part. Jesus.
That adds another layer of tension and uncomfortableness to the whole to the proceedings.
Certainly from Cecilia's point of view, yeah. Yeah.
No, you raise a great point, Evan, because, when I read about this, I read that it was a queer horror film, and I was like, ooh, queer horror. I love queer horror. Yeah,
it's kind of queer. I mean,
in the sense that there's a two queer women who are going to get married,
right? Of course, but and I don't know that you need to spell it out. It's never spelled out whether Cecilia is queer. I mean, there's no talk of any relationships in her life,
right? Right.
So, and I get that the Jake Gyllenhaal poster, was it Jake Gyllenhaal? I can't remember.
Yes,
and
it was.
And Emma's like, I used to make out with this poster right here, and it's like, okay, so Emma's bi, maybe, I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter, but there's just a lot of unanswered questions generally about this movie. So, and I'm gonna disagree a little bit about the head crushing moment with the car. It was gross. And it was in slow-mo, but it looked so fake at the same time. It was just kind of like, eh. I mean, if you want to see good head crushing by a car, check out The Toxic Avenger. So anyway, do we have more thoughts on Sissy?
No.
Yes.
I do.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just one thing. you know, I knew it was going to be trouble when I saw a dead deer on the side of the road. And I was like, why the fuck do we always have to have dead animals be harbingers of horrible things and violence and killing? Mm-hmm. And then there's the dead kangaroo. So yeah, anyway. But yes.
That's a great point. Yeah, we were thinking that as we were watching it too. It was like, can we just watch a horror movie where someone doesn't kill an animal by the side of the road as a prelude to additional violence?
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Good point. I know. Get Out did it just about the best way you could. Let's just end it there. All right. Okay. So let's recap, everybody. Vesper, which is out in theaters today. What do we think? Yay? Nay?
I'm going to say yay because there's enough good ideas here.
Evan.
I think I'm more of a nay than a yay, but I did like elements of this movie. So it's more of like a meh, but more of a nay.
Yeah. I'm going to say a mild yay, an advised yay, a heavily considered yay. Your mileage may vary. I don't know. And then Sissy, which is out on Shudder now, as of yesterday. I think for me, this is another one. There's a lot of good elements here, but it doesn't tie up very well. And the message is fucking weird at best. So yay-ish? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat. Yay-ish.
I totally understand the yay-ish. I'm going to say skip it. But Aisha D is amazing. Her performance is hands down, far and away, the best thing about this film. And so I guess just for that, sure, maybe see it. And, you know, this has gotten rave reviews. People love this. But yeah, for me, I would not want to watch it again. So I'd say skip it. But Aisha D is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot to love. There's also a lot to make you go, what the fuck? So
yeah.
Okay. Well, gangs, peeps, whatever. That wraps up this episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. We want to thank our editor, Otto Clammer, for doing the heavy lifting each week so that we don't have to. You make us sound great, Otto. Thank you.
Thanks, Otto.
Thanks, Otto.
You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. If you want to go to our website, that's spoilerpiece.com. On social media, we're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. If you'd like to email us, you can do that, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. Send us a note. Tell us, hey, I just saw Sissy, and it was fucking great, like Tony the Tiger would say. Or, if you want, you could give us a call.
At 862-21-PEACE.
And let us, give us an earful about Vesper or Sissy or, whatever. Zodiac, which is a part of our Patreon this week. I mentioned it at the top, going to mention it now. We talk about Zodiac this week, which our patrons picked for us to watch and yap about. It's over on the Patreon for $5 a month. You get it, 280 plus bonus episodes of other things we've done. And if you join now, if you think about it, that's like a really great deal because $5, 280 episodes, yoy. Yeah, anyway, I went on about that too long. So my name is Dave Riedel. I write and I talk about movies. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And if you want to follow me on the social medias, I'm at Dave Sees Movies, on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
My name is Evan Crean, co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living, which is still available on Amazon, by the way. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Real Recon, and that's real as in film reel.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I write film reviews for Edge Media Network. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. I'm also a member of Gallica. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionS World and on Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S. And I have Evan's book, and it's great.
Oh, thanks.
I have Evan's book, too, and that is correct. It's great. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.